using digital marketing to increase market share. And we have Jordan. She is the Senior Account Executive at Fusable. And before I just hand things over to her, I just want to say a quick bio. So Jordan has been working at Fusable for over 10 years, which was known previously as Randall Raleigh. Maybe she will tell us a little bit more about that transition. But she is an experienced marketer and advertiser, expert who specializes in the construction, agriculture, landscaping, and trucking industries. She is skilled in digital advertising, strengthening brand awareness, lead generation, and programmatic marketing. She has a strong sales professional background with a master's degree in marketing from the University of Alabama and a bachelor's degree in public relations. So it is my pleasure to welcome Jordan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alina. I'm very excited to talk with you all today. It seems like lots of good content being shared, so I'm really happy to be here. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So thank you for the introduction. As Alina mentioned, I've been in the industry, specifically the construction and trucking industries, for 10 years. I've worked with OEMs, aftermarket providers, dealers, and lots of other kind of odd and ins of outs of those types of companies within these industries. And for the past 2 years, I've exclusively worked with dealers. So I've had a lot of opportunities to sit in their offices, meet the teams and the sales managers, and really just better understand the challenges that you face. And those challenges have changed a lot over the years. The past 3 years, the challenge has been that nobody has inventory. Now, the most recent challenge that I'm hearing is really from the sales managers, and they're saying that they don't know how they're going to sell all the equipment that they have on the lot. They're really worried that the sales reps don't remember how to sell. They've just been order takers for the past 3 years. So if you're feeling that way, hopefully I've got some solutions for you today. A lot of those dealers are looking to the marketing team for help. And I really want to encourage you to do the same thing, because now the buyers have options. So our job as marketers is to really disrupt that buyer behavior. I have access to a lot of the data needed to do that. If you think about every time somebody purchases something, it reveals something about them. Once you compile all of those purchases, now you have market share data. So today I really want to share the insights and what that EDA market share data says, and really what that means to your marketing team or your sales teams. Now, I do want to tell you that the delivery of this information is probably only going to take about 20 minutes. It's going to be hard for me to talk at you for an hour. So I really encourage you to take notes. Write down any sort of questions or things that stand out to you, and we'll circle back towards the end. I would love to brainstorm maybe a use case for you so that it really is beneficial. All right, so let's dive into the data. So this is our first data set. I took all of the equipment financed in a cat dealer's AOR and charted when landscapers make their purchases. So you can see that I color coded it. And this shows a nice little buying season of about 4 months there in the spring. And the majority of those purchases are happening in April. So if you look closer at the numbers, this shows quite a lot of purchases all year round. There is a little bit of an exception here in February. And one could really argue that the purchases of the units are really not that far off from one another. So you've got 750 units financed in April, with 630 units on average financed at the end of the year. So if you really only targeted during that 4-month buying season, you might miss out on a lot of sales altogether. That's a problem. Now, this is just one cat dealer's territory. Let's look at another one. So this is a completely separate territory, but it is right next door. And you can see that this dealer's peak season is not in April, it's in January. So if you only target during the 90-day campaign, which is a popular tactic, you might miss out on that buying season altogether. And really, that's not how the algorithm works anymore. It's a dated practice. So it's crucial that you use data in your territory. This really brings us to our first point. The first insight that the market share data reveals is that you need an annual plan, a strategic annual plan, one that is based off the buyers in your area and one that are specific to your territory. A survey that the Equipment World brand did in 2023 showed that 53% of the buyers in the construction industry consider replacing their equipment more than 8 months out. So for those of you trying to reach the ag industries, it's even further out. It actually shows that 67% plan more than 6 to 8 months, 18 months out. So if more than half the buyers start their buyer's journey 8 months out, and we see that the buying season is 3 to 4 months long, that covers the whole year. Know that you've heard that stat that the buyers have to have at least 8 touch points or 12 touch points. When you actually Google this, it says close to 50 touch points are needed. So if you're not targeting those buyers before the buying season, you may miss out on getting that magic number of touch points needed to really hit them when, before they're ready to talk to a sales rep. Now, some of you in here may actually be following some sort of annual plan, but I want to really challenge you to think about the level of specificity needed in the marketing message. Is your marketing message making the biggest impact that it could? Are you just blanket covering your territory with different ad messages, or are you really trying to use the data to make an informed decision? So I'm suggesting that you could use the market data to guide the buyers throughout their purchasing journey. Sticking with that landscaping example, you could target them with benefits or comfort features while they're in research mode, comparing you to your competitors, and finance offers when the majority of those purchases are being made. So instead of the seasonality being when you market, the seasonality could really dictate your ad message to move the buyer further down the sales funnel, closer to the sale. One of the biggest mistakes that I see dealers make is only having one set of creative. And a lot of times that's for financing terms. Now, don't get me wrong, financing terms are great for people who are ready to buy. But what about all of the other people that need to be nurtured? The people who are in that 8 months consideration phase or more. What are they considering? Well, that's what your marketing message should be about. Let me repeat that. Your marketing message should be about what the buyer is considering. We live in a world where convenience is king. Even here in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, I can get something delivered within 2 days. So if the buyers have to work too hard to find information about you or about the machine in order to have to compare that to your competitors, they just simply may not. So it's important for you to help them make that decision. Now, in that same dealer's AOR, in that 6-year period, the data shows that 67% of the buyers only purchase one machine. Now, this data set doesn't actually consider like the first time buyer. We'll come back to that. I do have information on the first time buyer, but I have my years. So my point is that if you only have buyers in your area, or the majority of buyers in your area that are making up your market share, are only buying 1 or 2 machines in that 6-year span, then what are they going to care most about? These small contractors are likely the owner and the operator and the fleet manager and maybe even the technician all in one person. So they're going to care about the convenience features. They're going to care if their back hurts at the end of the day, or if the joystick is ergonomic. They're going to care what that means to them, and they're going to think about those machines' capabilities far more and far longer than they're going to think about that financing term. Those small fleet contractors or hobby farmers could make up the majority of your territory. And again, it's crucial to use data that is specific to what your buyers are doing. And that's a good thing, right? You don't have to convince everybody that your brand is the best or that you have the best service. You just have to convince your small micro market and compared to the nationwide data. So I really just want to encourage you, to ask yourself, what information are you sharing with these buyers to help them make this decision? Are you making it easy on them, or is there a lot of friction to get to the information that people need? One thing to consider is pricing. A lot of times people say, we don't want to put pricing on our website. And sometimes there are restrictions from OEMs, and we get that. But I will tell you that the data shows that the more you can put in terms of details about pricing, specifically thinking like rental rates or used equipment, where you do have a little bit more flexibility and less restrictions from your OEMs, it's best. And quite frankly, you want that because you want to try to prevent people from reaching out that are not that serious. Think if you could only have phone calls of relevant equipment buyers or renters or whoever that may be that are interested in moving forward with the purchase, and the pricing conversation is already out of the way. It just makes you more successful, and it really increases your lead quality. So, okay, we've talked a little bit about the seasonality of messaging and how that can help you increase your market share. And this is going to move those buyers further down the sales funnel. We've talked about messaging ideas around new machine sales, and that's all assuming that there's really nothing else standing in the way, you know, such as a bad reputation, or, maybe some sort of hesitation with purchasing the brand that you sell. I recently started working with a dealer who took over another territory from a dealer who really had not done a great job of supporting those buyers in that territory. This new dealer is really having to do a lot of damage control. They're trying to remedy the trust in that brand's promise. And the first thing that they're doing is admitting, hey, historically you've not been supported. So they're validating that feeling that, man, this, I was done wrong in the past. Like, why would I consider them? So admitting that it was a problem is one of the things that people want to hear. In college, a long time ago, the BP oil spill was a case study that we looked at. And the number one thing that we learned is that they didn't take responsibility for what they had done wrong. So, obviously, our great host here, Satisfy, could help you identify those issues. But I recommend a content campaign for this. A lot of people are hesitant to have campaigns that don't actually tie to an ROI. And that is a challenge as a digital marketer, because not every single campaign can produce, the leads that are going to lead to a sale, right? But if there are things standing in the way of someone considering you or your brand, then that information is valuable for them to learn about. The most successful content campaigns that I've ran have to be educational and informative. When someone tells you how great you are or how great they are, how does it make you feel? It's kind of cringy, right? Like, you don't really want to brag on yourself or talk about yourself. So it's important to have someone talk about you, maybe one of your customers that had that previous feeling, that one merits the feeling that there's some hesitation to move forward with purchasing from you, and also just says how they overcame that. So the information just really hits differently when it comes from somebody that you can relate to. And in this case, it's the equipment buyer. So as I mentioned, I've ran a lot of content marketing campaigns, but my favorite example to share is one that was from a popular wheel loader manufacturer. They wanted to test two different styles of videos. One video was made by the OEM, and it was very high-end production. It had drone footage. It was dramatic. The lighting and the music, it was sexy, right? It was intense. It talked about the cutting edge innovation and how powerful the equipment is. And it was really produced to make you feel something. But when we ran this alongside another video of the customer talking, he just had his boots on and his work clothes. He talked about his business and why he chose that particular brand and model. He shared how he used the equipment and what features that he really liked about it. He walked around the equipment and really gave that particular viewer a full scope of what went into his decision-making process. That dealer supported him, and that's a big deal after the sale. So the video had some B-roll footage of the equipment being operated, but for the most part, it's what you see on screen. It was a talking head. It was simple. And that testimonial style video was much, much longer, really almost 3 minutes longer. You can see here on the timestamp that it was almost 4 minutes total. So which video do you think people watch more of? That sexy cutting edge short video from corporate, or the one of Jim Bob's personal experience? It was the personal experience, of course. The equipment buyers watch what they could relate to, and a lot more of that content. So if you tell a good story, don't be afraid to create longer videos. There are certainly channels where that works out better, such as YouTube versus CTV or things like that. But you could replicate that success over Facebook and some of the other things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a video. Videos are memorable because it plays to more of the senses. You all know this. It's impactful, but you can use other formats. Taking that same example and turning it into a written case study, that works too. I actually did this for Linex for many, many years, and they were really trying to work on changing the mentality that Linex is only for your pickup trucks. They wanted to let people know in the equipment industries and the work truck industries that Linex is very beneficial and you should put that on your fleet. So everyone has that yellow sticker on the back of their cab, and getting that mentality in the work truck space was the campaigns that we ran, and they were wildly successful. So if you want to try to remedy that reputation or change the buyer perception of your dealership or of your brand, or really just introduce a new place where you could sell into, maybe a different industry like what Linex is doing, use your customers to do that. It's going to go a long way to help you win back those buyers and that you may have lost, or the people who are not even considering buying from you. So just make sure that message is relatable and relevant. So the two most important parts of a marketing campaign, it's going to be the message and who you're reaching. So we talked a lot about the messaging. Let's talk about who you're going to target. It's got to be the right audience. And I hear people say all the time that they don't trust digital marketing, that they're not confident that they're actually reaching the prospects and the customers who are likely to buy from them. And they're not wrong. I think that their feelings are merited. Targeting people who Facebook thinks is an equipment buyer, it's a huge risk. For an example, I pulled an audience of equipment buyers in 20 counties in the great state of Alabama, and it showed about 1,200 buyers. I tried to replicate that same audience in the same counties using Facebook's detailed targeting. So I added construction industry, interested in equipment, layered in different brands, and really tried to narrow down as much as I possibly could. And Facebook still showed that there were over 150,000 people in their assumed audience of equipment buyers. That's a huge discrepancy. So if you're not targeting known equipment buyers, you're wasting money. And I want to make sure that your marketing dollars go further. So how do you do that? How do you know who to target? Well, use first-party data. Now, you target your own first-party data if you want to. That's a great way to stay on top of your customers, to stay top of mind with them. That's going to help with retention and ensure that you don't lose market share. But to gain market share, you're going to have to target people who don't know about you or aren't comfortable moving forward with that sales conversation. So Fusable's EDA data makes it really easy for you to be able to create audiences of these proven equipment buyers. These would potentially be new customers for you. And you can see here that you can do that by equipment type, by fleet size, brand, model, size, class, and so on. mean, there's tons of examples that I could give around this. And so many times when I present this information, so many of the dealers are saying, we had no idea that we could segment it in this way. Let's look into some of these examples. So size class, guys rarely size down. So if you wanted to, you could target buyers of a specific size class with a machine just a little more powerful. That's usually effective. Replacement cycles. This data allows you to filter by the purchase date. I'm thinking about that infrequent purchaser again, that makes up that dealer that we looked at, makes up their territory. So if they just financed a mini excavator last year, they're not likely to buy that anytime soon. So for this reason, some dealers target people in their campaigns who have not purchased in the last 5 years or 7 years. So if they're not likely to buy what they just bought, what are they likely to buy? Well, the correlated equipment report that we have access to shows that the buyers who purchase mini excavators are also likely to buy track loaders, large excavators, and skid steers. So your competitors are using this to get quality leads. You're really getting in front of the sale based on what else they need to do their job. Now, it's important, when I talk about what your competitors are doing to really emphasize that what works for one dealer may not work for another. What works for one OEM may not work for another. You really have to use the data specific to your area and the specific to your markets or the buyer personas. And you should really try multiple audiences and narrow it down to the ones that perform the best. So many times I hear people targeting one audience, and maybe it's because they haven't had access to filter in the multitudes of ways that I'm showing with you now. But if you're only targeting one audience, then how do how are you going to optimize that campaign? You only can optimize it by a few ads, right? So the more audiences you can segment, whether that's by industry, whether that's by the replacement cycles that we talked about or the fleet size, it's important to see what's working best for that particular campaign at that particular given time. So I think that it's important to think about who's likely to buy too. If I could tell you that you could exclude buyers from your marketing campaigns that are never likely to buy from you, think of how much money you could save. Let's think about brand loyalty. This data shows who is loyal, and how we define this is if a buyer has more than 50% of one brand. If that person is purchasing Bobcat, let's say, and they're not going to purchase anything else, like maybe their dad was a Bobcat guy, their grandpappy was a Bobcat guy, and so on, it's probably going to take a lot of effort and money to target those folks and win them over to your brand. So should you try? Should you do that? Don't get me wrong, there's really a place for competitive marketing, but I think it deserves its own tactic and certainly its own budget because it's going to be a lot more expensive. So by using some of these filters or even looking at your own CRM data and figuring out what that looks like, if you have access to that information, that'll help you make your marketing dollars go further. So you can save money by prioritizing the folks who are likely to move forward, who are swayable. So some of you may not like digging into the data. Hopefully this hasn't been too painful for you. I certainly like nerding out and brainstorming on this. So again, I hope we can open it up to conversation in just a minute. But if you fall into that category or you just simply don't have time to do that, I can offer you an easy button. This next slide just talks about who is likely to buy. This uses a proprietary algorithm and it shows who is likely to buy within a given industry within the next year. Now, again, you could probably replicate this with some of your internal data if you wanted to, if you don't have access to this, but I'd love to help you. And really what this is doing is it's saying, who are the active buyers? Your inside sales reps probably have a lot to focus on. I know that's another big complaint from sales managers and sales reps that, who do they focus on first? Well, this is a way to be able to prioritize that. You can use any of the filters that we talked about before to apply that to your own buyers. But just keep in mind that every time someone makes a purchase, it reveals something about them. And all of the data here is to help you create a better marketing plan, messages that resonate with those buyers to move them further down the sales funnel, and also to help you discover who's in market now and predict that sale. So my hope is that this helps you tailor those messages and overcome those challenges like the surplus of inventory or not being able to target a specific buyer persona. So hopefully this has equipped you with some of that information. And I want to end with this. If you're thinking about increasing market share in your area, the two main ways that you're going to do that is by taking it from your competitors or by getting people who are entering into the market. So knowing that you need to get in front of the buyer perceptions and knowing that you need to persuade people to try your brand are the two most crucial factors when people are deciding if they're going to have that conversation with you or not. So I probably talked really fast, Alina. I'm not sure how much that was, but hopefully there's some nuggets of information. So I'd love to open it up to more of a discussion and see if there's something specific that we could dig into or brainstorm about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for all this information. Yes, definitely a lot of details and a lot of questions. So I would like to bring it to, let's just assume that we have very little knowledge about digital marketing, because the questions that are coming in have to do more for like bringing it to the basics. So for example, you talk about that it's very important in digital marketing to know who you're targeting. And you mentioned two ways to target. One, first party data, and two, market share data like the ones you presented. So can you talk about or define what is first party data, specific examples in specific audiences that dealerships can use to create audiences for their digital marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So think of first party data as having access to target them firsthand. So an example of that would be an email address. It would be a physical address of your customers, right? So it's data that you own. Second and third party data is data that you would potentially maybe acquire some list, maybe some sort of even going through an agency to target, right? So first party data is data that you own. So in this data that I presented to you, the EDA data, EDA is a tool and it is the industry standard for market share. Now it is specific to finance data. So think of it like a sample size. I tell people our data is really, really good. It's not perfect, but it's really, really good. So we know that in this database, we capture about 92 to 97% of all excavator sales, for example. And that's because those are more expensive. Now, for something like mowers, we capture 35% because some people are paying cash for that. So the data that I represented or that I presented today is a representation of what those buyers are doing. And you could use your CRM data, if you have that, or your sales data to break it down in a similar manner. You could see what their fleet size is. Now, that's contingent upon knowing who your customers are, and a lot of times that's difficult. If they did go to another dealer and purchase your competitor, they purchase used equipment, you might not see that. So that's why it's crucial to use other information to get to the right buyer. One thing I want to add about that when thinking about first party data is, and then the ways in which you can target that are, let's say Facebook. When we're saying first party data, we're uploading an email address that is tied to that buyer into Facebook. And we're saying, hey, Facebook, only target the people who are tied to this transaction. And if this person does not log into Facebook with this email address or a cross device tagging address, then we're not showing it to them. So we're not showing it to the teenagers or the soccer moms or people who Facebook thinks is an equipment buyer, right? My neighbor is a third generation cat diesel technician, and his son, who is 5 years old, is an experienced skid steer driver, and he watches videos on his iPads about cat and about skid steers and about moving stuff all the time. And do you think he's an equipment buyer? Not yet. Maybe he will be in 20 years or something, right? But that's if you're relying on remarketing tags or you're relying on even detailed targeting of Facebook, then you could be targeting my 5-year-old neighbor. So hopefully that explains the difference between first party data and why it's so crucial, is because it's tied directly to the buying habits of that particular person you're trying to reach.
Absolutely. This is perfect. Thank you. So the other comment that you, or the other comment that you made is that one of the mistakes that people do is to have the same message across. And how can they, and then you suggest that you should have multiple messages depending on the buyer needs. But then that also means a lot of work. So how marketing teams at dealerships can improve their digital marketing campaigns, delivering multiple content, but perhaps they don't have the manpower to actually create that many pieces of content.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, because I work with a lot of dealers and they are a one man or one woman band, right? Like they are the designer, they are the strategist, they are the media buyer, they're everything. And so the first suggestion I should give to you is get help, outsource that, right? Delegate. You're going to drive yourself crazy, and it will be the death to your brown hair. If you don't try to delegate that to people that you trust and that you can partner with. So I would say that if you really are thinking about the messaging for what your buyers need, think about the different parts of the sales funnel. I mean, every marketer, every salesperson knows that there's that awareness phase, that consideration phase, right? Like this is just kind of an age-old funnel that we all know about. And so many people are still at that awareness or consideration phase. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have all this sophisticated artwork and things like that. You could use the same image and just style it 4 different ways. You could put a banner across the bottom of the page and then put the financing offer on there, or you could kind of fade out the background and put some sort of highlight the cab and how spacious the cab is, right? So I think that you can recycle some of the same images or some of the same information, and just put it in a slightly different way. The video, if you have one video, or if you pay somebody one time, you could actually clip that up into 5 different videos. So there are ways to make more out of your content. You just have to get creative. And it does take time, right? But I think the most important thing is to think about what is important to the buyer. As I mentioned, some of those buyers are the technician, are the fleet manager, are the owner, are the operator, right? So if you're going to make a big purchase, think about all of the things that you want to know. I mean, the best example I usually give is buying my um, what features did you want? Well, I wanted the automatic lift gate. That was important to me, right? But my husband cared more about how we were going to save on fuel, right? Like what was important to him with that particular model was different than what was important to me. And so, if you're looking at trying to play to everything that goes into that consideration, then it's important to have the different marketing message and then let that buyer raise their hand and say, hey, this is what's most important to me. And if you give that information to the sales rep, that is ammunition that's going to go that much further. If somebody said that, the spacious cab or the computer system, let's say the computer system is updated, right? Or the software on there. If they click through and filled out a form or called because that's what got their attention, and the marketing team actually gives that information to the sales rep, then the sales rep could use that to connect with the person. Hey, have you tried one of these machines before? No, but I've heard that it had an updated system and that it can do this, this, and that, and the telematics is great, right? Like, I'm just spitballing here, but the point is that I feel like marketing and sales gets really disconnected. And so it can go the other way around too. If you are having trouble getting creative with your marketing message or recycling that same image and putting different content around it, ask your sales reps, ask your sales manager, hey, what are some frequently asked questions, or what do people really care about the most on this machine? What's shocking to them that they get excited about? That's gold. That is content. So hopefully that helps answer your question of, you don't have to put a whole lot of time and energy into it. You just have to understand what the buyers care about. And if you don't, then ask your sales reps.
Great, thank you. Yes, and that also um, gave me an idea what we have been talking in previous sessions. It's that, of course, with voice of customer, voice of employee, and we also have satisfied reviews. The purpose of all these tools is to gather feedback. So the people that are already using these tools, if they have positive reviews, positive comments, that's something that they could also leverage for their digital marketing campaigns.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Testimonials go so far. So if you have positive reviews and you're allowed to share those, you can certainly make that your ad copy. We've ran a couple campaigns in the past where it was quite literally a testimonial campaign, where the headline was, hear from our customers, and the actual description above the ad on Facebook specifically was a different quote every single time. I've even seen people have it just a colorful, like a blue background, right, with just that quote on it. And it's just a series of that. So again, something that doesn't take very much time to put together, but it stops the buyer and helps them reconsider what maybe they were hesitant about before.
Absolutely. The next question has to do with the first comment you made about dealerships complaining that perhaps their sales teams for the last 3 years have been taking orders, and now they may have to switch to more of a solution selling type of approach. So do you have any specific tactics, ideas, suggestions that if any dealer is going through the same situation now, what they could do with their digital marketing campaigns to assist in the sales process?
Yeah, I think getting quality leads is such a it's probably painful for marketers to hear, because that's probably all that sales reps say, right? Like, we want quality leads. And sometimes sales reps have lead fatigue. They're given so many leads, they don't really know how to prioritize those. So I think when we're talking about ways to support the sales reps, I think it's important to figure out what inventory you have on the lot. What are you going to start having to pay interest for because it's been sitting there for so long? What pays more for the sales rep? How do you make more money? Are there certain machines that you have a better margin on than others? These are all things that could be equally successful in terms of marketing and help encourage the sales rep, or at least give the sales rep some leads that they're probably are hungrier for. But again, the prediction is that the sales reps are going to be hungry this year and in the coming years with all the inventory that we're seeing on the lots, which is a good thing in a lot of ways, right? It's a shift in the industry, but I think, again, just connecting with your sales team, understanding what's important to them and how they receive those leads. I see so many types of marketers say that they want form leads. That's great when you can prove success that you actually gave that form lead to a sales rep, right? You can trace that all the way back to a sale and get that return on ad spend or get that return on investment. And now the marketer's the hero, right? Who doesn't want credit for their hard work? But if you're the buyer, you want to talk to somebody right away, and you're looking at moving forward quickly with this purchase. hauls are really a win for the buyer. So many times I see marketing campaigns that make it difficult for calls to come in simply because the marketer cannot trace that, right? Or track that or take credit for that. So I really encourage you to keep an open mind about the format in which the buyers want and the connection rate, and also keep an open mind based on what the sales reps want. Now, a lot of times it's really difficult to cater to sales reps because they think they know best, right? So it is a perfect balance of strategy and what they're going to be excited about, so that they follow up quickly. Another thing is having a great relationship with the sales managers. I see so many sales managers that do not hold their sales reps accountable to following up with these leads in a timely manner. We have data that shows that there's a 900% increase in following up with the lead within 5 minutes versus 10 minutes. Now, 5 minutes and even 10 minutes is probably not realistic, right? Like that's a really hard thing to do, but the fact matters that the faster you have that connection, the faster you contact that person, the better it's going to be. The more the higher your connection rate is, the higher your close rate is. So those things are really crucial to examine. Having a good relationship with the sales managers and that link between sales and marketing allows them to hold their sales reps or their inside sales reps accountable to following up with those leads in a timely manner. And if they don't, then there are repercussions of that, right? I mean, essentially, if you're not following up with these leads in a timely manner, you're wasting your money. So getting everybody else on board and really trying to collaborate and work together is, I think, going to be the key going into kind of the inventory surplus time period that we're upon right now.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the next question is, how do your clients currently segment their audience into distinct buyer personas? And what methods have you found most effective for targeting each persona?
That's a great question. I know that we talked a little bit about the different filters that you could and how you could segment those. So by fleet size, by the type of equipment that they're purchasing. I think one that is most effective is the ones that you have a relationship with versus the ones that you don't. So many times I hear people say, oh, we know about everybody in our area, right? Or we've got a relationship with everybody. And then I pull up an EDA prospect profile in their backyard and I'm like, well, did you know about this guy? He's 3 miles down the road and you didn't sell him the machines because I can see this here. So I think targeting, really understanding what you're doing for your existing customers and your first party data, the people that you know about, and having a different message to the people that you don't know about, and trying to figure out why you don't have a relationship with them. I think that's crucial. Again, this in a lot of ways, it goes back to the sales team and figuring out, hey, is that the right guy for that particular territory? Do we have enough sales reps in that particular territory? Maybe it's pretty heavily populated. I think some of the segments as far as marketing campaigns go are heavy machine sales and like compact equipment. I think in the industry before, and as I'm kind of getting closer and closer with these dealers, I've heard that people buy, let's just stick with that landscaping example. I've heard that they buy like a fleet of mowers, and then they buy that compact utility loader, like that Toro Dingo or TRX 1000 or something like that. And then they buy the skid steer or the mini excavator. And in these dealers' minds, people really size up, right? That's not the case. The case specifically for one of the OEM brands that I work with is that on average for a new skid steer, the equipment sizes or the fleet sizes that people have before they buy that new skid steer is 7. And their OEM is pushing them to target people with a fleet size of 1, 2, or 3. Well, that's not their core customer. So again, digging into the data and figuring out what people are doing or who is actually buying your equipment. If the OEM is not providing that to you, then seeking that on your own accord is huge. And again, just echoing this again of making sure it's specific to your territory. So buyer personas, as kind of a recap, heavy versus compact. Not necessarily just because you're trying to sell compact equipment not targeting heavy, right? You still want to target heavy because there's a strong correlation that they buy compact. And really just not making any assumptions. You know, I know that the data is really, really good, as I said, but you have to test it for yourself. One thing that I want to add, kind of as a piggyback to that question, Alina, is the first time buyer. I promised that we would come back to this. I'm glad that you reminded me. So for the first time buyer specifically, um, you know, it's hard to target people that you don't know about, you know, next to impossible, but we have found a workaround for this, and it's creating an audience in Facebook, just sticking with that example, of people who have one purchase and creating a lookalike of that. Now, there's some OEMs out there that are doing this on a nationwide scale, and it's very successful for them. And what I mean by that is the algorithm is you know, targeting people who are just entering into the market. So there's some similar online behaviors of the people who only have that one machine. Now, even 7 years ago, 5 years ago, I probably would not have been caught dead recommending Facebook's lookalike audience or some sort of audience that uses an algorithm, but it's gotten so good. I mean, you all see the AI shift, right? And how powerful that's going to be. So it's the same thing. It's the same concept. The key to success with that is the seed audience that you put in to that lookalike. So creating a lookalike audience, or allowing Facebook's algorithm to create a lookalike audience based on your customers, or based on these proven equipment buyers. So first time buyers, there is a way to target them. You just have to get a little bit creative and trust the algorithm there.
Awesome, thank you. And then the last question, and I love this question because it has to do with the theme of the summit, which is the human equation in dealership excellence. Is, in your experience, what are some common pitfalls to avoid when crafting personalized marketing messages?
Oh, interesting. Again, I think you have to test multiple messages, right? I think you have to figure out what's important to your buyers. But one of the things that I see people do the most, as I mentioned before, is just targeting financing terms. That's a big one that's just very top of mind. But it's also just assuming that they're going to come in. You know, like you're assuming that they're going to come in and test drive or do a demo or something like that. Like I see so many people, so many dealers say, oh, well, if we give them the right information, they'll come and demo this. You know, going back to my card example, I bought that sight unseen. And so many of my colleagues have too, right? Like, again, in the world of convenience, you know, we can see every little dent and scratch that's on that car, on that machine. And we trust that when it's delivered, that we're going to know exactly what it's looked like, because there's a level of transparency that the internet gives us. There's a level of transparency that video gives us that we haven't had before. So, kind of assuming that people are going to come in and test drive it, I feel like is shifting and kind of fading out. When you look at rentals specifically, you know, they don't necessarily care about that as much, because it's just rental, right? Like they're going to give it back. They don't care. But for new machine sales specifically, and for you specifically, I think people know how to operate an excavator. They know how to operate a skid steer. So really trying to get them, again, on the phone to have those conversations, and asking the right types of questions of what matters most to you. Or, you know, have you ever purchased a piece of equipment sight unseen? You know, and really just kind of understanding, you know, how comfortable they are with moving forward with the sale over the phone. So again, demo days, all of that, fantastic. They definitely still have a place. But just understanding how the buyer purchases now, and being open to the fact that they may not purchase the way that they have historically purchased, or the way that you yourself purchase, I think that is crucial to keep in mind.